call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Residential Tenancies Amendment Bill, second reading.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Residential Tenancies Amendment Bill be now read a second time. Mr Speaker, this bill is part of the government's program of improving the quality of our older building stock. It's about making our homes warmer, our homes healthier, and it is about saving lives. Mr Speaker, just last night, Parliament passed building amendments by 120 votes to 1 to upgrade our buildings in respect of earthquake risk, a bill that's expected to save the lives of 300 New Zealanders over the course of the next century. This bill too is about improving New Zealand's building stock, but is focused on our rental properties. The first important change is the requirement for smoke alarms to be in all of our rental properties by the 1st of July this year. 75% of fatal fires are in properties without a smoke alarm, and most of those are rental properties. We currently are going into winter with 120,000 properties without a smoke alarm. And it's estimated that the provisions in this bill will save 3 lives a year. That's about the same as that earthquake-prone building bill, although it's interesting, Mr Speaker, to note that where that bill will cost $800 million, this bill is expected to only cost $4 million, emphasising just what a no-brainer smoke alarms are in our homes. It comes with a cost benefit of over $17 for each dollar of costs. Mr Speaker, the regulations to implement this smoke alarm requirement have been consulted in and are in the public arena. We're requiring all smoke alarms, the new ones, both for those where homes do not have them or where they're replacing existing smoke alarms, to be the new long life 10-year smoke alarms, because there has been too many tragedies where batteries have not been replaced with a consequence loss in life. We are requiring in those regulations that those smoke alarms be installed to the manufacturer's requirements. We're requiring that the smoke alarms cover the different floors of houses, that they cover sleep outs, that they cover caravans, and that they require the spread through a home to be able to provide that protection. And I'd be very surprised if there's a single member of this House that would question that very practical requirement. The second very important change is in respect of the insulation of houses, and needs to be seen in the context of how progressive our government has been in making progress on this issue. First thing we did when we came to government is said that a government needs to get its own house in order. We had 30,000 state houses that were not insulated, and in our first term we got on and got those insulated. The biggest single item of new government expenditure in the term of this government has been the hundreds of millions of dollars that were put into the Warm Up New Zealand program of providing a subsidy to insulate houses, of which I acknowledge the Green Party's support for that Warm Up New Zealand program. We've done 290,000 houses with those subsidies. The next step addressed in this bill is a compulsory requirement for landlords to insulate those 180,000 homes that are not insulated. The combination of these initiatives comes to a total of over 500,000 homes. And I do find it, Mr Speaker, a bit rich for the comments from the likes of Mr Twyford that these measures are inadequate, too little, too late, when let me compare the numbers. 500,000 homes insulated in programs by this government, less than 50,000 under the previous 9 years of the last Labor government. As is, this government is doing 10 times as much in terms of getting our homes insulated and those benefits that are coming through. This bill requires all social housing. That is where the government is paying a high level of subsidy to have these insulation requirements in place by the 1st of July this year, and Mr Speaker, requiring them to be all done by the 1st of July 2019. I do find it ironic, Mr Speaker, that only last week we debated a members' bill by Mr Little. That members' bill has a timetable that is 4 years slower than the requirement for homes to be insulated in this bill. Now, Mr Speaker, there's a debate about the insulation standard and some misinformation that I want to make absolutely clear, because we have published and consulted the regulations to support this law about the level of insulation. Every new home has to be insulated to the 2008 standard. Any home without insulation has to be insulated to the 2008 standard. Any home that is insulated, but that insulation is no longer in a fit state, has to be upgraded to the 2008 standard. The debate is around those properties, the hundreds of thousands of properties that were built after 1978 that have insulation, it's in reasonable condition. Should they have to upgrade their standard to 2008? And I want to put a logical case as to why that is not included in the bill. Firstly, it's this. Delivering 180,000 homes to be insulated requires 60,000 per year. The advice from the insulation industry is that is going to push them to the limit to get that job done by the 1st of July 2019. The second is this, and let me specifically give you, Mr Speaker, the numbers. A home insulated to the 1978 standard has an 84% reduction in heat loss. The 2001 standard to 87%, the 2008 standard to 92%. In other words, when we take an uninsulated home and we insulate it, we get a 92% reduction in heat loss. Massive gain. Actually, requiring a home that was built in 2007, Mr Speaker, only gains an extra 5% reduction in heat loss. And the cost-benefit analysis is absolutely clear that it does not stack up. Members on this side of the House do not live in that world where when we impose costs on a sector, whether it be the rental sector or any other, that it is a free good, because it is not. It is a cost that is passed on. And if we pass costs on, particularly to those that are struggling families with the rental cost, we are passing that cost on in rentals. And so it is absolutely proper, Mr Speaker, that when making these regulatory decisions, we do look at the cost benefit, and frankly, requiring every home to be upgraded today to the 2008 standard does not stack up to a cost benefit. Actually, we're imposing more costs than we are benefits. I'd also point out to members opposite that this government is also requiring from the 1st of July this year a disclosure requirement in every tenancy agreement around the level of insulation that is in the walls, that is in the ceiling, that is in the floor, because it is our view that the rental market will function better as a consequence of having this level of insulation there. The last point I want to make about this bill is the 3 extra requirements that we're making in residential tenancies. The first of those is in respect of giving my ministry the practical powers to be able to enforce the existing standards. One of the nonsense in this debate around levels of dampness, issues of ventilation, the safety of electrical, plumbing and other fittings, is that all of those are currently covered, including heating, in the existing regulations. The issue is not the regulations, the issue is enforcement. And the 2 provisions in this bill to enable my ministry to be able to prosecute those slum landlords and ensure those properties are brought up to standard is an important practical step, and so too is the provisions around retaliatory provisions to support tenants where a landlord takes a retaliatory action by giving them notice.
I'm sorry to interrupt the Honourable Minister. The time has come for me to leave the chair for the dinner break. This debate is interrupted and I shall resume the chair at 7:30.